Hello, and welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast. I'm your host, Matt Rossi, and with me this week are my fantastic co-hosts, Joe Perez and Liz Harper. Take a bow, guys.
I am taking a bow, but because this is an audio production, I'm going to describe it to you instead of actually showing you. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not sure that translates. I mean, I can try.
The funny thing is, you could have just been quiet and said you were doing it.
When I'm talking, I always make like a lot of hand gestures, and it's
100%.
like then I think, oh, no one has any idea what I'm doing. I should probably stop.
Yeah,
there's no reason to stop.
I talk with my hands too all the time. I can't help it. I was raised by Italians and Puerto Ricans. If I didn't talk with my hands, I'm pretty sure my body would explode.
This week, we are going to be talking about various things. Like we got a couple of news stories we're going to talk about. And we've also got some emails to read. That's good. Thanks for sending those. And, questions you ask on Discord and all that stuff. That's all great. We all love that. But we're going to get started with a story that literally dropped today. And it is that there will be no BlizzCon online, or BlizzConline, if you prefer, in 2022. The February BlizzConline that was being planned out is not happening. And Blizzard has said that they are reimagining, and you can't see my air quotes, so I put them in my voice. They're reimagining BlizzCon for the future. Like, what is it going to be? How is it going to look? This is simultaneously the least surprising news I can imagine. Like, the moment the current situation with Activision Blizzard and its legal troubles started, going back months now, I knew that we were not going to see any sort of BlizzCon in 2022. I knew it.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, it's also, I don't want to say interesting, but it is certainly something to think about in terms of considering BlizzCon is a big part of how this entire problem got started, in terms of how people were being treated there and what was happening there. Do we, it's not surprising, but will there ever be an in-person BlizzCon again? When I went to BlizzCon 2019, I remember saying to people as a joke, this might be the last one since I finally came. And now I'm seriously wondering if 2019 will be the last in-person BlizzCon we ever have. I'm going to turn this over to Joe and Liz to discuss it. But first, in fact, I'm going to pick randomly with this. I actually have a D20 here, so.
I call evens.
Okay, well then Liz, because I rolled a 16. No, that means Joe.
This is already so confusing.
I love it. The chaos is real big Mitch energy here. I'm not surprised. I honestly think this is probably the right call, but it's more than just the lawsuit and everything that's been going on. We've heard about the working conditions and how everything are and how people are feeling about working on the games right now. And you have to keep in mind that BlizzCon in any form is a huge production. The folks volunteer for it, sure, but there's folks that don't get to volunteer for it, and they put tons of hours into it. Even when they did BlizzCon Online last year, which we heralded as a great thing because for accessibility, it was a great thing. And we were talking about how we'd like to see more digital cons in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if that is something that still happens, but right now, them not doing this is probably the smart thing to do. Give people the break, figure out what's going on worker-wise, because they probably have nobody that's going to volunteer for it. And like Matt pointed out, BlizzCon is where a lot of this stuff kind of started. So maybe we'll be better for it at the end of this. Will there be another BlizzCon? Maybe not. Maybe it'll evolve into something else. Maybe it'll be a part of something else. Maybe they'll start doing multiple events a year that are like BlizzCon lights that attach themselves to something like, I'm just going to throw like how PAX is out there. And PAX is basically like a giant multi-day con, but it's also like a ton of mini cons strung together because there's card games and board games and all the video game stuff as well. Like there's subsections to it, right? Maybe BlizzCon starts turning into something kind of like that. I selfishly don't want it to go away because that's how I met a lot of people that I consider very good friends. For a lot of us, it was our first actual convention we went to that wasn't just some local one that was super small. So there's a nostalgia factor there despite all of the black cloud that surrounds it. So, but whether or not it's going to be the last one that we had in 2019 and the last one, digital one last year, I hope not, but we don't know.
Liz?
I also hope this isn't the last one, but I don't think it's going to be the last one. I feel like in-person gaming events, even me, I'm an antisocial hermit, but like Joe said, I met so many people at BlizzCon. I've spent so much time with people that I play with online all the time, but I never see them. And that means so much to be able to go to BlizzCon and spend time with people that I spend so many hours with online and hang out in real life. That is such a big community thing. Being able to connect with everyone and being able to cement those friendships in reality and see people face to face. That's such a great experience. But at the same time, this is now is the time to reimagine BlizzCon. Now is the time to reimagine the gaming convention and to think about it in a safety first perspective, because a lot of gaming conventions, a lot of geek conventions, they don't necessarily think safety first.
Oh
And
no. Yeah.
it's kind of a side effect of being a very homogenized culture. Like, there are a lot of white men doing gaming, and that's how it's been for a long time. And, kind of, we've certainly seen with Gamergate how there can be a backlash to other people, trying to make their mark in gaming. And that's just so the whole thing has really just not been from a perspective of, okay, I'm going to a convention, but I also need to be worried that I might get hurt. Someone might slip something into my drink. Someone might harass me or stalk me all over the convention center. There might be physical violence against me, because all of these things are potential concerns for women and marginalized groups. And they usually aren't addressed by gaming conventions, particularly harassment, which can be a
And
big deal. Like, we go to these things to see people in real life, and it's so much fun. It's so exciting to make those connections. But if someone is harassing you, if someone is stalking you, someone's bothering you, that totally takes fun out of the equation. And traditionally, gaming events have not taken this seriously. So now's the time to do it. This is a great time to pause BlizzCon and make it better next time.
I'll tell you right now, when the world is safe and I throw LoaderCon whatever year, y'all will be invited, and I'll make sure that it is a safe and friendly event. It'll be fine.
But yeah, I do think that, we do need to think about how cons are going to go in the future, both in-person ones if we have them, and, any digital replacements. There needs to be a focus on things like security, safety, and
Accessibility as well.
yeah,
So.
accessibility. Yeah, absolutely. The blind guy over here absolutely agrees with that one. But at this point, we're going to move on. Liz, you suggested 2 Hearthstone topics. I'm going to let you pick one. Pick which one you want and talk about
Just
it.
one. I can only talk about one. Okay.
I think I'll be completely upfront with you. The second one you posted is interesting, but I don't know if it's a discussion topic. The coins one. It's up to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll go with the newsy one, which is that if you've been playing Hearthstone Mercenaries, you may have noticed that, there's kind of a mystery spot in different bounty maps, and you progress through the bounty towards this mystery spot, and when you click on it, you get a random thing. And the most valuable thing, in my opinion, is the mysterious stranger, who, when you click on the mysterious stranger, you get a task for one of the mercenaries in your party. And when you complete this task, which maybe use this skill 20 times, do 500 damage, things like that. When you complete this task, you get coins for that mercenary, and you get a pretty substantial amount of coins for the mercenary. And coins are not easy to come by, specifically when you're looking for coins for a specific mercenary. It's pretty time consuming to grind those up. So people had kind of found that lower level missions were the way to do this, because the bounties are shorter, the maps are smaller. You can just go in and zoom to that mystery spot, click on your stranger, collect that task, and then you rake in the coins. It was still slow because the mercenary you get coins for is still randomized amongst who you have in your group. You don't choose one. You have a choice of 3 of the 6 you have with you. So you still couldn't perfectly target the mercenary you were trying to level up, but it was better than anything else. And Blizzard saw people doing this, and so they have made it to where the spawn rate for the Mysterious Stranger is super, super low if your party is high level and you're doing a low level bounty. So they've just made it significantly harder to get coins because the higher level maps are both pretty challenging to get through and also they're longer. Some of the early maps are like 4 encounters, 5 encounters you have to get through the entire map. And later maps might be like 10 and of very difficult fights, and you have to progress through a bunch of them to find that mystery. It's frustrating because it's hard to get coins. It's hard to get coins for the people you want to get coins for, and it's really slow to advance. And this makes it just that little bit slower. And that's really all I got, except unless you want me to spend like a half hour complaining about the coin system, which I could do. But
could you boil it down into like a soundbite?
Explain it to those who maybe don't understand what the coin system is.
Okay, well, in Hearthstone Mercenaries, you have heroes. Really, you should think about this as like pet battling because the system is a lot like pet battling. You have these mercenaries and you fight them against other mercenaries and you kind of progress through like a randomly generated map of encounters. It's just like a number of encounters with a couple of different paths to the end. And you progress through these fights to level up your mercenaries, to improve their abilities. You need to collect coins, and leveling each ability costs a certain number of coins, starting at 50 coins and going up to 150 coins. You have 3 abilities per mercenary. Each has 5 ranks, and they also have 3 pieces of gear. And all of this needs to be leveled up if you want to make your mercenary more powerful. And all of that costs coins. It costs something like 1,500, 1,600 coins in order to get them to maximum level. And doing a single task will net you 30 to 60 coins. So you can see you need a lot of tasks in order to get those coins and advance your characters. And the only other way to do tasks besides finding this mystery stranger, which is a random spawn on maps, is to just wait for them to spawn. Every day you get 4 tasks that randomly spawn. Could be for the mercenaries you want, could be for mercenaries you don't care about. And the only way to even remotely target them is to play through a map and go for that mystery spot and hope the mystery spot spawns a mystery stranger and hope the mystery stranger offers you a task for one of the mercenaries that you actually want to advance. So it's like this multi-level thing of randomness in order to get a relatively small reward, and they've made even getting that small reward more difficult. Does that make any sense to anyone who doesn't play Hearthstone? I'm not sure at this point.
I think it does because it reminds me of what they've been doing in Shadowlands.
In
terms of gear, the way gear drops and so forth. It's randomization put on top of randomization, like with the Great Vault. So it's like it's very hard for you to have a strategy because the strategy is just keep hoping. So yeah, it makes sense.
It's just keep grinding, and if you don't get what you want, grind some more, and if you don't get what you want, grind some more, and it's an awful lot of grinding in Hearthstone right now.
Yep. Anything else before we move on?
And unless you want me to go into my like half-hour Hearthstone rant, no.
Then okay. Because whilst I don't necessarily mind and think it would be interesting, I do think that we kind of need to talk about the fact that we now know when patch 9.1.5 is going to drop.
That is kind of important, slightly.
So next week, November 2nd, is when it drops. And one of the things people have been asking us pretty constantly is, when's the Mage Tower? When's Legion Time Walking? And the answer to that is my birthday. So on December 7th, a.k.a. Matt Day, and also the 10th anniversary of Cataclysm, by the way, keep that in mind, they will be dropping Legion Time Walking, and you will be able to start running the Mage Tower. I believe it's going to be repeating after that at a relatively common amount. The first time it goes, it's going to have 2 weeks. So you'll have 2 weeks to do Time Walking and 2 weeks on the Mage Tower. And then after that, it will be repeating on the usual Time Walking schedule. So that's happening. There's plenty of other stuff happening with 9.1.5. A lot of changes. We've talked about some of them in the past. The the changes to things like island expeditions to make farming them easier, the transmog changes bringing in all of Battle for Azeroth stuff to the legacy loot so you can farm it for transmog. There's a fair amount coming in 9.1.5, but the time walking changes are the ones that I think most people are curious about. Are you interested in the new Mage Tower?
Yes.
Joe is interested in the new Mage Tower.
I'm interested in the mount reward. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get through all of those challenges. I don't know. Right now I don't have enough characters at 60 to get through all the challenges.
Don't you need basically 12? Like you need every class?
No, you don't.
No, you just need rolls.
Oh, so you need like 7. Okay, no, that makes sense.
You don't even need 7. Like, my main is a paladin. I can do 3 of those 7 challenges. I can do the healer challenge. I can do the tank challenge. And I can do one of the DPS challenges. But then you need different classes to do all the DPS challenges.
There's like 3 DPS challenges, right?
Yeah, exactly.
3 DPS, 2 healing, and then the tank one, I know for sure.
I thought there was just 1 healing.
There's one I think specifically for discipline.
Oh yeah, I don't have one of those at all.
I could be mistaken. It's been a long time since I really paid attention to the tower, but I remember like discipline being a standout for some reason or for that. Maybe I don't know if it was complexity or whatever, but
I think discipline is on one of the DPS.
Yeah, okay. That's what people are saying. It's the same one as the Beastmaster Hunters. Okay. Thank you, Molly.
So, right now I have a paladin, I have a shaman, and I have a druid, all at max level, with okay gear on my alts, but that is not enough to do all the challenges. I need like 1 more character. I haven't looked at it lately, but I need at least 1 more character to get everything.
For me, it just gives me something to actually work towards with my alts. It's one of those things where like I haven't really had a large incentive to really work on alts this expansion because 1, there's too much to do with 1 character and too much to keep up with, which we've talked about before. That's a whole other topic. But this is something that gives me an excuse to finish leveling up my hunter, finish leveling up my priest, finish leveling up my warlock, like actually go through and spend some time with some of those to get them to a point where they can do the mage tower, because I liked the mage tower. And I think I have some of the challenges actually completed from actual Legion. And I think they said they're carrying over the completion of that. I can't remember. Yes, no. Am I imagining things?
I'm not aware that they're carrying over.
I've not seen any carryover stuff.
Okay. Even then, like I enjoyed doing it at the time, so it gives me something to focus on that I enjoy, because we've talked about this on multiple times here. I've complained about it in guild. My guildies that are listening to the stream right now or listening to the recording will know that I've complained about this. I hate doing Torghast. I don't like it. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It does not make me happy. And so like I don't have repeatable content that really draws me back into the game besides keeping up on my wizard chores on my main character. And even that's sort of waxing, but this gives me something that I do want, that I enjoyed, that I like the challenge of, that I can focus on and work towards. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the various challenges now, and there are 7 of them.
Right.
And from what I'm seeing here, you're going to need at least 2 other characters, Liz, because paladins can do 3 of these 7, and there's like not a lot of overlap in the ones. Like a Death Knight can't do anything that they don't do stuff, even though you could have a Ret Paladin doing an impossible foe. They don't get it.
Right.
It's so, and for that matter, Closing the Eye, no Paladin on that one. So the DPS that Paladins can do is just one of several. So yeah, I think you're going to need at least 2 other characters. You're probably going to need a range. You're going to need a ranged DPS. Although ironically, the God Queen's Fury that is one of the ones Ret Paladins can do. So
I mean, I have a shaman and I have a druid, but that's not enough to cover all of them.
No, it's close though.
It is close. I think
druids can do a lot. Druids can do 1, 2, but then again, Druid does one that Paladins can do as well.
Exactly. The Druid tanks and Druid healers are both overlaps.
But you could do an impossible foe for Feral Druid. End of the Risen Threat. Yeah, that's one that you
That's
you
the
could do
healer. Yeah.
But Balanced Druid can do Thwarting the Twins, and that's not one. So you could cover 2 others with your Druid.
I'm just gonna have to get someone to teach me how to play a druid because I'm not a good druid.
Yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm not getting the book, like straight up. I know I'm not because I don't care enough to level all these different characters. Like I'm willing to go do it on my warrior because cool. I'll get the warrior tier set. That's like a better looking version of the mythic tier set. But I'm not interested in doing like all these different things. If I had a druid though, I would definitely want to get the Mage Tower reward for like Guardian Druids.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a heck of a nice transmog. It's actually better looking, in my opinion, than the original thing that it is a skin of. The original Werebear, I think, is actually lacking compared to this one. I think this one looks better. So I might level my druid just so I can get that, because that's cool.
Yeah, I have a bunch of characters that are right on the cusp, and then I just got to gear them out. And with the catch-up mechanics that they're putting into 9.1.5 as well, because there are a number of them for anima and other stuff even still being adjusted, I should be able to get them to a point where I can do them pretty quickly. And I'm sort of here for it. I think it'll be fun. At least for me, it will be.
Yeah, so that's cool. That's something you might want to, if you had not known it already, you might want to get ready for it because it's next week as we record this.
But the Mage Tower is a little further out.
The Mage Tower is,
as you said,
December
7th. Yes.
My birthday. I will be old, and for my birthday, they're giving me a chance to bash my head against a really hard encounter from several expansions ago. Thank you.
I mean, it's the perfect gift.
Yeah.
What do you get to Matt Rossi that already has his shoulders?
Yes. I don't know why I just was struck with a moment of melancholy. Oh yes, I was remembering the years I spent on that guy. Anyway, so yeah, that does it for news for now. Liz is going to say something.
I'm trying to say something. Are there any other 915 things that y'all are really looking forward to other than the Mage Tower?
The transmog stuff.
Always transmog stuff.
Transmog stuff.
Well,
I mean, I do like the catch-up mechanics that Joe mentioned. I
Covenant swapping.
Really haven't. Yeah, covenant swapping, and the fact that there's a question about covenant swapping that we might get to today. So I don't want to go too into that. But yeah, there's a fair amount that I'm interested in. But
yeah,
it's kind of hard for me to talk. Like the legacy loot change, I'm also interested in it because they keep having to do this. Like they did this during Battle for Azeroth too. Remember they had to suddenly just put Legion and legacy loot. And now they're doing it for Battle for Azeroth stuff. I'm hoping this means that when they go into the next expansion, they will realize that the legacy loot rule is outdated and just do it and not make themselves, or even say, we will be doing it at the middle of this expansion and just get that out of the way up front. Because, yeah, it's silly. It's silly that you have to wait. You're supposed to be in like the next expansion content before you can go 2 expansions back for transmog farming is just silly. But yeah,
one thing I'm going to do on day 1 is I'm going to go see if I can solo any Battle for Azeroth raids. I'm real curious if my paladin can do like maybe the first raid.
You might be able to do Uldir. My friend Matt's a Prout Warrior. He's done most of Uldir now.
Yeah, I'm gonna. That's day 1. That's what I'm gonna be doing. No competitive content, nothing like that. No covenant stuff. I'm gonna be just seeing if I can solo old raids.
You got to get that 2-handed mace. It's awesome.
I don't have any of the plate transmog from Uldir.
It's good transmog too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like the face having helmet, but otherwise, yeah. I don't like it when my helmet just has a face on it. It's. I didn't like that Wrath set that was like Edvard Munch's The Scream, and I don't like the Uldir face, but I do like the transmog. Aside from that, I think that the armor looks cool, and I have both of those maces. I have the one that the boss originally dropped that was that it was intended to be purely cosmetic, but when he dropped it, it actually had stats.
Yep.
So I have the statted version of that mace, which they then turned into a cosmetic only. But I have the original version, which is really cool. That's one of my favorite things that I have. And both versions of that mace are really good in terms of looks. So, but I think we're going to move on now to doing some of the emails and questions that we do here on the show. And as always, I become a old grizzled prospector the second I start talking about this. And I don't know why, but I'm just going to go with it. If you've got a question for the podcast, we have multiple ways you can send it to us. The first is email. and y'all have been emailing again, and that's great. I'm actually really appreciative. Keep doing that. The email is podcast@blizzardwatch.com with the subject line podcast or Blizzard Watch, so we know it's for this show. Or you can go to our Discord, and we have 2 Discord channels for questions. We've got the Patron Q and Podcast Questions channel, and several questions were taken from that as well, and we really appreciate that. That's for patrons because they make the site and all it does possible. But if you can't be a patron, we get it. We know how things can be tough, and you just don't always have the money you would like to spend on things. You can still go to our Q Questions channel, and you can ask questions for this podcast or the other podcasts we do. As Joe likes to remind us, we're up to 3 podcasts, guys. We need questions like a hungry beast, constantly wanting questions. That's us. Question us.
Just imagine that I'm a giant space plant saying, "Feed me, Seymour."
Yeah, kind of like that. Or like a dragon with a big eye in its mouth, because that's a thing that exists now.
I have that in my book. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, regardless, questions, ask them. We love it. I feel like Liz kind of jinxed me earlier because she's like, "Oh, he's not gonna pick me, and I don't know what's gonna happen." And it's like, now I'm like, maybe I'll read the question. I could read the question to them, and they'll have to sit there and go like, "Oh God, he's reading the question. Can he do it this week, or is his eye completely blown out? Who knows?" Well, let's find out. Hi, Watchers.
Ooh.
To add to Rickles' question from last week about artifacts, I have a question. I like Matt's arms warrior ideas, but I would have liked to see Zinrock as an alternate arms weapon, maybe unholy. For that matter, out of 36 artifacts, not a single one was a troll weapon. Yeah, a troll expansion, but a troll pointy stick would have been, nice. But my actual question is this. The artifact power was kind of a mess. Instead of the tree it got, how about modeling the weapon skill tree a bit more like a classic skill tree on an additional skill tree like the main character skill tree? Quest chains, raid bosses, PvP to unlock, a slightly gated to level it up, no endlessly running Maw of Souls grind on out AP. Easy target. Imagine if my troll warrior could wander around the old troll instances with Stromcar and get cheered on and everyone is friendly. The cower. Crud. So yeah, that's the question. It's from Easy Target. Which one of you wants to go first?
I've talked a lot. Liz, you want to go?
Sure. I mean, one of the things that I really felt didn't work with artifacts was that you could eventually collect as much artifact power as you needed and max out your artifact and just get everything. And what I didn't like about that was there was no choice. I feel like you should always add player customization and player choice. So I could choose to go this way down my artifact path and be stronger here, but a little weaker there, or go this way. And it kind of felt like the way they did artifacts wasn't quite like that. There were no choices. The only choice was, okay, this is more important to me. I'm going for this first. And that was it. I felt it was kind of maybe a little too simple, and it could have been something really neat that could have really pushed customization and, speccing your character the way you wanted. And maybe you could have even had abilities on the tree be stronger than they were, because players would have to make choices and they couldn't get everything. And as it was, they were kind of, not all of them were very exciting. There were a few exciting ones and a lot of totally not exciting ones.
Yeah, I think one of the things I dislike about the original World of Warcraft talents, and I've always disliked it, and it's one of the reasons I never want them to come back, is all the stuff that's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chance to X.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just there to fill in a role. We need to get you spending points to get down this tree to one of the major capstones. So here's a bunch of, it just adds more crit, or it just adds more haste, or it wasn't haste back then. It was like attack speed or something.
Attack speed and dodge percentage. And
yeah, that kind of stuff I don't like. I do like, however, the idea of the artifact talent tree having exclusivity. If you pick this, it puts you on this tree, on this path, and you can't go over there now. And you know what I mean? There's choices that you make, and those choices direct you. And you can't just be everything. That was the biggest problem with the artifact, in my opinion, was because they were trying to make the artifact grind go out and do something. They eventually just let it fill up the whole weapon, and you just had everything. And that, on the one hand, the power fantasy was nice for a while. But when they put in a thing that was literally just endless artifact power for more stuff. That's this. You just hit harder and you just keep filling this one thing forever. It's like, this is not like meaningful anything. This is literally just magic stick, get more ouchie. I don't feel like I'm doing anything. So, and because of how it became part of your character. Like, your character was just more powerful because your weapon was more powerful. And so it felt weird when you lost it, because suddenly you lost all of it in one go. So I don't know that I want it to be just like classic trees or what have you, but I do agree with the idea that there should be choice and there should be exclusivity. Like, you cannot have everything. If you take this, that's it. You can't take those other two things. That's one of the things I like about the current talent tree, is like, you get one thing from it. Like, for every tier, you get one choice. You can't pick those other two ever. But I would also kind of like it if it went the way, like, the one thing I did like about the classic tree was that it had an end goal, and you could get there in a couple of different ways, but you could also choose, since you chose to go that way and get to that end goal, there was still stuff you could do from the other trees, but they were directed and they weren't going to get you to the end of that tree. So that kind of thing I would kind of like to see brought back. I liked having a 31-20 build back in Classic. I just didn't like that it was 31-20 when like 15 and 5 were just busy work talents. Like, okay, I got to take 5 levels in, don't hit me as hard. That kind of thing is not, to my mind, very compelling. Joe?
So I'm going to be kind of a slightly unpopular opinion. I liked the way that artifacts went for the simple fact that there were 36 of them. Let's keep that in mind, that is a insane number of artifacts. And if you were to do what we're talking about, pie in the sky here, having all that choice, now you have to balance how many different paths do you put on each of them. So now you have 36. Yeah. Let's say there's 36 of them that each have 3 different paths on each of them. That's over 100 paths that you now have to balance on top of balancing 36 specs in game. That is,
I definitely think you're right here, by the way.
I agree.
But one of the things that I think the reason we're talking about it is because we're thinking about a future artifact.
I understand, which is where I was going to go the next part. So the next part is, if you do something like that, I think you approach it differently. I like the idea of exclusivity and choice. And honestly, I really like the way that the Covenant track works. When you are soulbound, and like you pointed out, you have a certain set of exclusivity. And yes, you can change it on the fly like you can talents. That's fine. But you make a choice. You go down that path. It has choices inside of it that you can't have everything inside of the path you choose. It gives you a sense of almost meaningful nature, and I like the idea of having an end in sight. Part of the problem I had with artifacts in general isn't so much how they implemented them with like the choices they made at the start. It was that it was a continuous, endless, bottomless pit that made it feel like if you didn't keep up with it, you just got weaker because you did. And it incentivized players to spend a ton of time farming artifact power to try to keep up and stay competitive if they were doing something that needed them to be competitive. To Shaman, I'll just use healing as an example. If one has, you've completed X plus 10 and the other one has completed X, you're going to want to take the one that is X plus 10. That was a legitimate problem we ran into when trying to find groups for Mythic Plus or for any sort of competitive content if you wanted to do that stuff. So instead, I think instead of having like 36 artifacts, you pare it down to 1 per class. And inside of that artifact or item or whatever, you get those choices. You can choose the spec or the tree that you go down inside of it. So you still get your 36 paths or whatever you're going to choose, but it more closely looks like the Covenants, because I honestly think the Covenants are like the perfect balance of it. There's a point where you just hit the maximum apex point. You get the final thing that unlocks in the Soulbind. You have the choice. You have choices within those 3 choices. And I would love to see that carried over. We got a question, I think it was last week or the week before, I apologize, time is a blur, where somebody asked what system we'd like to carry over. And this question actually made me think about what I would like to carry over from Shadowlands. Get rid of the goofy mission table. It's been along forever. I don't know why it's still here. I don't even touch it anymore. But something like this, the system with like the Soulbind, applying it to something in the framework of like that, the artifacts, that'd be great. And increasing things like cosmetics or RP events or things that like allow you to walk into certain areas that, you know, NPCs react to it. We've seen them do this. We've had artifacts and weapons and items in game. Matt, you've talked about this before, like having the original Ashbringer and going to the Scarlet Monastery. They would bow to you. Like having the, and I can't remember the name of it now, the elemental weapon in Legion. You would go to Storm Peaks and the elementals would not aggro on you as long as you had it equipped. And it was something that was just kind of
the Fist of Rodin, wasn't it?
The Fist of Rodin, the Storm Fist. If you had it, you literally just did not get attacked up that mountain. You just walked up. Nothing bothered you. But if you took it off or if you didn't have it, they would immediately aggro you. And it was a cool little flavor thing. Like they could add stuff like that on there. And I think paring it down a little bit, instead of worrying about story for 36 items, instead of worrying about different paths and power levels in 36 items, having something smaller in scope allows them to do larger things with it. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's where I'm at. I'm with you guys. I like the idea of having sort of that exclusivity, allowing you to have choice and agency in what you choose, what it does for your character. But I think with the way they had it before, 36 artifacts, it would have been impossible. Absolutely impossible.
I will say, however, that I agree that it was weird that not a single weapon was troll.
I would agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When we have a plentiful number of troll weapons.
Yeah, and you know, I would basically not want Zinrock. I would want Troll Kalar because it's got more lore to it. We have no idea what Zinrock was, other than it was. But for that matter, there's also Jinrock. If we're going to be bringing back rock weapons, Jinrock, which was better looking. But at any rate, yeah, I think we've pretty much covered this. Easy Target, thank you for the question. I think it's a good point. Both the troll item thing and the idea of how could we have done artifacts differently, or how could we bring that back if we did. For the next one, I'm not going to read it because that was probably more reading than I can do at one go. Yeah, I'm going to just say Liz.
Okay, we have a question from Arvis. We know that 9.1.5 will allow a character to retain the covenant items that they've earned after leaving a covenant. Does this translate to other characters who can use the items, mounts, pets, transmogs, being able to use them even if they never joined the covenant? For example, if my Shannon joins only Bastion, can she use the Night Fae mounts and transmog that my hunter has earned?
I have been told that they can, but I do not know from my own experience.
Yeah, this one I'm actually not sure on.
Honestly, what's the harm if it does? And I guess that's a question that I would ask, because I know that some players have very strong feelings on this, but I keep coming down to the question of if they allow it and open it up, I personally feel that it's just better. I think that if you've worked that hard to unlock stuff and those different covenants, why not? Why not let it be account bound at this point? I think we've moved past the point of exclusivity on those particular types of cosmetic items. So I don't see a problem with it, and I kind of hope that it is the case. I don't know for sure, though. Like, I've heard the same thing that Matt heard. I've heard that it is. I have not experienced it, so I don't know.
But yeah, it is certainly something to be looking out for. And I'd also, is it a surprise that I agree people should have more transmog options? I mean, come on. It would be more of a surprise if I was like, no, we shouldn't do this. Like, what are you talking about? No, in fact, it should be harder to get transmog looks in general. It's not Rossi. Pull off the mask. It's Mitch. It's been Mitch the whole time. And he doesn't even believe that. Yeah, it's true. I don't believe it.
By the way, Padilla in chat says it does. If you unlock a covenant to 80 renown, all of your characters can use what you've unlocked.
And that potentially opens up cool transmog options, which, as our regular listens will know, is the only thing we care about here at Blizzard Watch.
I don't think you should spread that kind of propaganda, because when they find out that we hate transmog and all of its works, they're going to be upset. No, seriously, guys. At this point, I mean, if we were doing this as a video podcast, I'd literally have a fashion show every week. I'm not messing around here.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's good. Thank you, Fredia, by the way, for coming in on that. Okay. Well, here's a question about features that the game desperately needs, that I think is the question Joe thought we answered last time, but we didn't. So here it is, Joe. Read it.
No, we've answered a lot of this type of question, but this one is different. Hello, watchers. I just want to ask if there is any feature you feel the game desperately needs. I know they are working on trying to give us the best game they can. The only feature which would benefit WoW greatly would be the job system from Final Fantasy XIV. The fact that you can level all the classes on one character is very appealing. I know you have mentioned the dual classes and class skins as a possibility, using lore as a reason for it to be possible, such as Tyrande being a hunter priest among them, but lore would not support multi-classes. Personally, I would use Medan. I would have him be a recluse, truly scared of all his power he was given, and make it so the only reason he was able to be every class was a gift from Azeroth. And when she saw this did not help, she tried a different approach with Mango, but maybe it is time for her to revisit this by giving the player characters the same gift, and maybe one person from each class, so it truly isn't lore-breaking. I'm sure professional writers could come up with a better reason, but at the very least, there is no reason why certain classes like Warrior, Hunter, Monk, and Mage should be classes every character in their armor class can pick up in addition to their respective class. And that is from Anonymous.
I'm going to say I don't know what he means by tried it with Mango.
I don't either. I think that might have been an autocorrect, maybe.
Yeah, like, who's Mango?
The only thing I can think of is he meant to say tried it with Medivh, but Medivh really wasn't multi-class. So
or Medan. Maybe he meant Medan twice, but
maybe
I don't
he
know.
meant Medan.
But Mango. I was like sitting here for like the character from the old Saturday Night Live sketch. Like, just a fruit? What are we talking about?
He's Mango. Okay. Yep. Sorry. Wow. Yes.
Only Joe and I know what we're talking about. Sorry, Liz.
Padilla says that they think they mean Magni, which is also possible. But Magni's also a warrior.
Yeah, Magni. But yeah, okay. At least I understand what you mean. Okay. Well, let's have Liz answer.
Yeah.
I mean, this is another one that comes down to customization. And like we were talking about earlier with the artifact trees, I really loved talent trees from the early game because they let you do that customization. And if you allowed multi-classing, like I'm thinking multi-classing, not where you can like switch jobs like in Final Fantasy XIV, but if you could multi-class like you do in D&D and say, okay, I'm going to be like Tyrande, you're a hunter priest, and you have some skills from here and some skills from there, and you kind of have to choose, okay, I want to be more priest or I want to be more hunter. I'm going to advance this, not that. And you can hybridize your character in unique ways based on what you want to do in the game. Like any class combination you come up with could be really interesting and unique, and it would just be for you. And that's what I really love about games, is ways you can customize and say, this is how I want to play. It would probably be a balance nightmare, but I am super into this idea.
Yeah. I'm sitting here thinking about like how that would work, but I think I need more time.
Okay.
I don't think we have time for me to actually get into it in this show. I used to actually have an idea for like multi-classing.
So
that would work within. Oh my God, I'm actually talking about it. All right, here we go. Basically, my idea for multi-classing was always that you, instead of having it be like true multi-classing where you are members of both classes, you would be able to pick up talents and abilities from another class. Like you'd still be a paladin, but you could get Mortal Strike, or you could get like the priest mind control ability. Like you'd unlock it with like a quest of some sort or a quest chain. And in order to get the abilities from a class, you'd have to do that quest chain for that class to unlock it. And you could only do it like you could only have one on a character. Like if you wanted to have like priest abilities on your paladin, you could, but you can't then also go out and get hunter abilities, because I do think you have to limit the complexity, not because players aren't smart enough to figure out how to use it coolly, but because the balance becomes impossible. Like if you've got a warrior with like hunter and paladin and druid abilities, it just after a while it's just too much. It works in tabletop, but even in tabletop, if you just like tried to go to level 20 and be one like wizard 2, sorcerer 2, warlock 2, paladin 2, like eventually it would be useless. So I do think there needs to be a little constrainment to it, but I do like the idea of multi-classing as opposed to the job system. If only because the job system confuses the heck out of me. I'll be up front. I've never really understood. So, but that's my 2 cents on this. In terms of systems I would like to see, I don't got one for you. Sorry.
I do. I have one. And this is going way back to the deep past of Lore Watch, and I think before I was ever officially a host on this show, I guested very early on in the Blizzard Watch podcast, early days, all those many, many years ago, and I brought up something about hybrid classes. I like the idea of hybrid classes, and there are a different take on it in every game you play. And for my money, Lord of the Rings Online probably had one of the coolest systems for it in the Dwarven Runesmith. The Dwarven Runesmith was a purely, truly hybrid class between DPS and healing that gained effectiveness based off of what it was doing at the time. So as it cast more DPS spells, it got better at using DPS, like basically being DPS with a certain ramp up time, and less effective at healing. It didn't take it away from them. They could still dip into that and still heal, but then the meter would swing the other way. And as they did more healing, it would reduce the amount of DPS they did. And you could balance out and switch on the fly. And it was a very, very dynamic feeling gameplay. And that was one of those things where I really fell in love with it. And no other game that I have ever played has had a class quite done like that. WoW has had hybrid classes from the very, very beginning, but hybrid really ultimately just meant classes that had different talent trees that could dip into any of the three meta roles, right? Or multiple of the three meta roles, and the three meta roles being tank, healer, DPS. Shaman being one of them, Paladins being another, Druids being another back in the day, when we had those really big talent tree systems that Liz was talking about and Matt was talking about earlier. You could do that. You could be a hybrid that did multiple things, just didn't do them very, very well. But the problem is you were set in stone. At least to me, the problem was that it was set in stone until you went and spent money to respec and change everything up again. Why not embrace the idea of a hybrid class again? Why not maybe find out a way that you can do something where your effectiveness in your role can change on the fly? And I'm just thinking in my head how much more dynamic that would be for 5-man group content or for mythic dungeons and things like that, where you're a healer and you have a whole bunch of, let's say, paladins. They tend to not take damage, and if they do, they tend to heal themselves because they're paladins. You're bored as a healer, so you DPS, but you're not really doing that great of DPS unless you want to really maybe put on DPS gear because you know it's going to happen ahead of time. But if you're going into a pug group, you don't know how that's going to be. But now if you have something that lets you switch on the fly a little bit and increase your effectiveness in that role, at least temporarily, then you can go ahead and react to it in real time. You can have that real time reaction. I like Mythic Plus timed dungeons. I think they are very fun. I like doing them with friends. But the problem is it relies very, very heavily on pre-planning. There is not a lot of reactionary that you can do once you're in. Once you're in, you're locked in. That's it. And sometimes things go sideways. And I've talked about this in the past. Some of my best memories of raiding or best memories of dungeons from ye olden days is those weird, terrible moments where players were able to step up and fill a role on the fly, like, I don't know, an arms warrior deciding to tank for X amount of times because they had access to certain tank buttons while we were figuring out how to get a tank up, and a healer being able to kick into turbo mode to keep that off tank alive long enough for the group to recover. Or maybe the healer goes down and a DPS does that role, fills that role long enough to get through the encounter to bring the healer back up. I have not experienced something like that in a long, long time. And I think maybe bringing something that embraces the hybrid class a little bit more back into the game might allow for that to happen again. It might allow for those dynamic moments. And I may be ranting about it a little bit, but those moments in the past, that's when I felt the most epic and powerful. It wasn't because I was wielding an artifact that was powered by a Titan that was used to in the sundering of the world. No, it was because me as a player, I was able to do something that maybe I shouldn't have been able to do, or something that was really, really just clutch in that moment and pull it out and get to the victory that would have been snatched away from us if we hadn't. I miss those moments, and a class that is truly hybrid and can switch between, maybe tanking or DPSing or healing and DPSing or healing and tanking on the fly like that. I think would be cool. I don't know how the heck you would balance it. I don't know how the heck you would itemize it. I don't know how the heck you would do gear for it. But if we're pie in the sky it, I think that would be great. And I think that would also satisfy somewhat of that multi-classing feel, because you can have that, warrior hexblade paladin feel, or the cleric wizard, or whatever you wanted to do. And I think you could capture that a little bit. So sorry, that was probably a lot more than I think you guys wanted, but it's something I really feel passionate about.
I feel bad that I completely and utterly disagree with it. And
Shock.
I think here's why. I wouldn't mind it if we were in a system where everybody was a hybrid. The problem is that there are 4 classes that are not hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
And playing them always feels worse when somebody else can do what they do and then switch to doing something else and they can't. And even with tanks, we have tanks that are more hybrid-y than other tanks. Some tanks, when they're tanking, are just tanks and that's it. Others can basically suddenly be jumping around, massive DPS dealing, Titan gods, and still be tanky. There's a reason that Demon Hunters are by far the most popular tanks in Mythic Plus, with Paladins as a not particularly close second. And it is because Demon Hunters can do a ton of stuff that is not tanky. They are much more hybrid than other tanks, while still maintaining the tank essence. As long as that's the kind of problem that they have, and they do have it in World of Warcraft, I don't see how this works. And that's the only reason that I disagree with it. Not because it isn't a cool idea, just because it's not just even the balance issue. It's just an issue of, if we have non-hybrid classes, this is my basic argument has always been that WoW should never have had classes that didn't have at least 2 roles. And that, in fact, I have an idea for a feature that they should bring in. Nobody doesn't have another role spec. You give, everybody who's got anything has a spec that does something else. We finally get that medic spec for rogues. We get, that tanking spec for warlocks. Mages get a healing spec, and hunters, they can tank via using their pet directly, like as a tank. And you know what I mean? Like that way you never have to have anybody feel like, well, all I can do is shoot things, and the other guy can shoot things just as well as me and can also do this. So there's my idea for a feature. Everybody gets an off spec.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that pretty much answers the question. Oh, no, here's Liz. Cool.
Oh, no, I see y'all have been talking, and while you've been talking, I've been thinking over here, and that's a problem because then I want to talk more. The thing about hybrid classes in WoW at present, they're almost like playing multiple classes, like the job system where you can just switch around, because when I'm a Holy Paladin, I'm a healer. I am nothing but a healer. There is no hybridization. Me being a paladin lets me choose, am I a healer? Am I a DPS?
Yeah.
Am I a tank? There's no mixing or blending that I can do.
Exactly.
And that's what Joe's idea would deal with.
Yeah. But my favorite example of, why I like the kind of vanilla talent tree system was way back in the day. I was a holy prot paladin. I was primary holy, and I put all my other points in protection. That was not the meta spec. It was not the best spec, but I had much more survivability. I could off tank in a pinch if I really needed to. I wasn't good at it, but if the group needed it, if a tank went down, if an off tank went down, I could jump in and tank for a little bit. So you had that hybridization, and the game does not have that anymore. It doesn't feel that way to me.
And to respond to Garbwire in chat real quick, that's why you make it a choice. You don't make it the norm, right? Like if you do something that is like that, you just make it a player option, so you can play as a hybrid, or you don't have to, right? I don't know. Like, and that's one of the benefits, like to Liz's point, that the old talent tree did have. And maybe if they were to explore something like that and take out all of the bloat, because there was a lot of bloat. There was a lot of useless talents that, like Matt pointed out, that were just
the thing is, they weren't even useless. They were necessary.
They were necessary
but they
filler.
Didn't do anything. This is my biggest problem with that talent tree. When you first hired me to work on the site I worked on previously, I spent so much time writing talent guides And I
So
had
did
to
I.
keep
Yep.
writing them over
Every time
and
there was an update.
over
Every single
and
time.
over again. And it was always the same thing. People didn't want to know about the specs Liz is talking about, the cool, unique specs that weren't maybe as viable, but could allow you to do cool, interesting stuff. No.
How can
People
I
wanted
maximize?
the best spec, and if you tried to give them anything else, it was like literally rioting in the comments. I remember writing that Warrior column, and just every time I had to do one of those things, I knew what was going to happen next. And I knew when I went into a dungeon, it got so bad that at one point I remember I had 2 specs that I went with a lot. I went with a 31-5-15 spec, which was the Arms 31, Fury 5, Prot 15. And then I had a 31-20 spec, which was 31 Arms, 20 Fury, nothing Prot. I was not allowed to tank groups with the spec with Prot in it. People would get mad if I had Prot in my tanking spec. Like if I didn't go full Prot all the way, they thought the best tanking spec was 31-20, and they would not hear anything. And I remember this, and I remember being like just so tired of it. The things Liz is saying are true about those talents, but they're also not universal to how people played the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you brought them back, people would immediately, there would be that loud drumbeat of what's the best one,
And
what's the most effective one.
And we still see it now, even with even what was there. We saw it throughout Azerite. We saw it throughout
absolutely.
Soulbinds with everything else. Yeah.
I think it's Alison Robert who used to say that, players are relentlessly rational. They will find the most numerically appropriate way to do it, and then they will not listen to anything else. I mean, that's why one of the reasons I want to get rid of all the talents that are just, here's 5 points that make you 5% more crit. Or, here's 5 points that give you 5% more parry. Ditch all that. Give me smaller talent trees that have choices. But then by all means, I would like it if we had a talent tree that wasn't just a list of stuff and you pick one out of like 3 in a tier. I think we've experimented with that one about as far as we can go, and it is the reason we keep getting borrowed power systems.
Yeah.
It's the reason we keep getting complexity, because Liz is right. The older system had more customization. Just unfortunate that it also had a lot of stuff that was just there to force you further down the tree.
And a lot of stuff that was prohibitive to keep you from really truly exploring how weird you could get.
But I think we've covered this one.
Yeah,
you guys think so?
Yeah, I've talked a lot about it.
Liz?
We could go around in circles on this all night, but we should move on.
I think we're at time, actually.
Yeah, we're at time. I am going to say, I'm going to look. Do you guys see any question that you think we can answer fast?
I don't think so.
Nope.
No.
Changwon. Oh, buddy, heck. Yeah, all
right. It's a long one.
That is a long one. So, yeah, we're going to be done now. We'll probably roll that one forward into the next one.
Yep, like we do.
This is, thanks you guys for your questions. Again, if you have a question, please send it to podcast@blizzardwatch.com with the subject line podcast at BlizzardWatch, or go to our Discord. We've got 2 channels, the Patreon Q and Podcast Questions channel and the Q Questions channel. You can hit us up there as well. Gonna throw it over to Joe.
And remember, folks, that Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast or the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you, Joe. I'm now sitting here thinking about the weird Fury build I had that was a slam DPS build and how nobody used it but me. And I liked it, but nobody used it.
DPS shields, let's go.
I seriously, like, one of the things that was really the saddest part of Warlords of Draenor for me was that they put in a tanking DPS spec for warriors. They put in a sword and board DPS spec, gladiator stance. And then they got rid of stances entirely and took it out. So that brief moment for one expansion, we had it, and then it was gone. And it was never the top DPS. It was never... that's not true. It was the top DPS for a month. Before people started getting geared, they went into dungeons, they went into raids with gladiator stance, and then as gear got up, it fell off and it never came back. But for that moment, it existed, and that was kind of like what Liz is talking about with the talent thing, was that kind of hybridization, because if you were a gladiator stance warrior, you were still prot. You could still switch to tanking, and be a good tank, because you just had one talent that was a DPS talent that switched everything over. So yeah, that I'm thinking about that. But we actually have to end this show.
We do, yes.
So thank you guys for being here with us. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast. I'm Matt. You guys know Joe and Liz. Thank you for being with us, and we will be here next week.